What's up, guys? Thanks so much for clicking on the video. My name is Leah, and let's recap and review Real Housewives of Miami. This is season 7, episode 9. So, I don't really feel like getting on camera today. It's been a lot going on, nothing bad or anything, but just how when life just is life is lifing right about now. So, I wanted to make sure I stayed consistent with my videos and doing them in a timely manner. So here we are. So let's get into this review. All right, y'all. So y'all know sometimes before we get into the review, we get a little spicy over here. Well, this time I did a standalone spicy corner, mainly because I had a lot more stuff in my phone that I had screenshotted and saved than I expected, and the video turned out to be 30 minutes long. So check out that video if you want to know my thoughts about Adriana being on Watch What Happens Live, about Guerdy posting receipts about Marisol, about Stephanie going back and forth with the fans, more so her response to the fans being upset about her being first chair, and a lot more stuff. So check that video out. The link will be in the description box below. But something we need to get into before we get into this episode is it looks like Guerdy and Kiki unfollowed each other, or maybe Kiki blocked Guerdy. I'm not totally sure, but Guerdy was in the comment section of All True Tea's page, and they posted about them unfollowing each other, and she said this: "News to me, am I blocked?" with a question mark. And then she said, "Can't even find her on my search," and then the shrug emoji. So I don't know. I don't know if Kiki and Guerdy got into it at the reunion and Kiki just decided, you know what, this relationship isn't worth it, or if anything really played out. Because for Guerdy to be surprised makes me feel like nothing really happened. So I'm really interested to see how the reunion plays out. So the last thing we're going to talk about is two T's in a pod. And more specifically, it's going to be about Julia and these theories slash kind of rumors about why she's behaving the way she's behaving, especially as it pertains to how she behaved on the cruise. So let me play that clip for you guys.
No, Martina was more interested in this conversation than Julia. All Julia wanted to do in any part of this conversation was talk about herself.
Well,
I mean, even when Stephanie was wanting to share her story, Julia was like, nope, not gonna.
maybe she was thinking about Captain Sandy. I saw something go around. Did you read it?
I didn't read the whole thing. I just saw the clip and I'm like, that would be.
So there's some rumor that's going around that Julia had an affair with Captain Sandy. Is that what it was?
But remember, they were the ones on the yacht.
But Captain Sandy and her wife are so. I just don't see that happening unless.
I doubt it's true, but it's.
But where'd it come from?
Because that's where all the drama was on the yacht between the two of them. So, and they're saying that that's why she didn't want Guerdy there at that dinner.
Oh God.
So I wanted to talk about this because this is gaining way more traction than I actually thought it would, because I've seen several different variations of what Tamara is saying all across Twitter and even on Instagram, where people are theorizing or speculating or rumoring, if that's a word, that they feel like Julia was possibly trying to or was cheating on the cruise allegedly and used Guerdy as a cover-up. I've also seen some people say that they feel that maybe Julia was trying to proposition Guerdy to, get down with the get down and have some fun time with her, and Guerdy turned her down, and that caused Julia to behave the way she's behaving towards Guerdy. Mind you, all of this is just people's theories and speculations and things of that nature. But I was just like, wow. And the fact that Tamara is talking about it is hilarious to me, because some people thought that Tamara was reaching, but I was like, no, I've seen several different, like I said, statements and comments and tweets of people saying this or thinking that's something that went down. On top of that, shouts out to my mutual L Train on Twitter. He reminded me about season 5 when Larsa and Julia were getting into it, because Larsa told Julia that she saw, or her friend, no, it was her friend that saw her making out with some guy down at the bar. So it's not too far-fetched to assume that maybe, I don't know, Martina or Julia have some type of understanding, or Julia be in them streets. But I just wanted to talk about it because I feel like this might gain traction. And if it does come out to be true, the way that that would be one of the craziest seasons for Real Housewives of Miami and some good TV. But let's get into this review. All right, y'all. So let's get into this review. So it opens up and we see Adriana, her dog Bosky, who I think is a Bichon or a Bichon poodle mix, and Lisa. And they are at this place called Dog, which looks like a doggy like playground or a dog park mixed in with a doggy daycare and a boarding facility. We find out that Adriana decides that she wants to breed her dog or give him a chance to have his last hurrah because she is going to get him neutered. So we see this lady come up and she has her dog, and I think her dog is it looks like a Lhasa Apso mix, but I'm not sure. But the female dog was actually really cute. So we actually see Bosky do the do with the dog. And I was like, why are we zooming in on this? Like the cameraman really wanted to get this shot. And I was like, this is weird. Okay. Like I don't want to watch animals doing it. I really don't. But while they're, doing what they're doing, we end up seeing Lisa and Adriana go to the front of the establishment to have a conversation. We find out that Marisol is having a preppy party because Lisa ends up complaining about how like she doesn't have any preppy stuff. And she was just like, I hate themes, but she was like, no, honestly, I do love themes. I just don't really know what to wear for this party. And Adriana says she's kind of hesitant to go to the party after what happened on the yacht. She even is really remorseful and feels bad about the way that she responded to Marisol. She feels like her behavior was unacceptable and she had too much to drink. Lisa seems actually really happy that Adriana is acknowledging that, yeah, girl, you did a bit too much the other day. So we see that Adriana says, you know what, I'm going to go to the party, even though I don't really feel welcome, but I want to move forward with Marisol. So the conversation continues, and Lisa brings up how she notices the divide in the group since Julia has decided to be friends with Marisol and Alexia, and she doesn't really like it. She also says maybe that was also a reason why Adriana behaved the way that she did and came at Marisol the way she did. And Adriana says she really doesn't have a problem with Julia being friends with the women. She just doesn't like how Julia is moving and doesn't really seem to have time for her. And I think that's valid. I think it's valid for Adriana to say, like, hey, I don't really have a problem with you being friends with these people, but the fact that you're treating me differently because you're friends with them is an issue when I've had your back all this time, you know? So their scene ends there. We then have this scene of Julia and Marisol meeting up with one another, and they talk about what went down on the yacht. Marisol basically says that she feels like Adriana has been pretty much poking at her since the narcissistic party. And to be honest, I can see where Marisol is coming from because they were playing the red flags game and Adriana kept putting her flag in Marisol's vase. But I also feel like Marisol is being hypocritical because all of y'all did that to Lisa. And when she got worked up and upset, y'all didn't care. Like nobody really cared about her crying. It was very much like, oh, here she go type of energy. So I can understand where Marisol's coming from, but I also think like, girl, she was playing the game, and if that's how she felt, that's how she felt. Where I can be on Marisol's side is when she talks about Adriana body shaming her. Because to me, Adriana was doing a bit much. Even though it was entertaining, it was like, girl, this reaction wasn't warranted is what I'm trying to say. Like if Marisol would have came at Adriana first and then she would have had this reaction talking about her knees and being wrinkly and her not having talent and having cubic zirconium rings and fake bags, I would have been like, girl, that is totally warranted because Marisol came at you first. But Kiki just telling Adriana that Marisol did not want to be on the same yacht as her and she felt like it was going to be a nightmare shouldn't have gotten her that riled up. Because let's be honest, Marisol and Adriana aren't friends. They've been beefing since season 4. They don't really have a relationship like that. It's very frenemies based, to be honest, and more so enemies if you ask me. So I just was like, yeah, that was a bit much. And Marisol goes on to say how, she keeps calling me old, but she's older than me. Y'all are only a year apart. Marisol is 58 and Adriana's 59. And to be honest, Adriana looked amazing. I don't think Marisol looks bad, but if we trying to say like youthful, looks, Adriana doesn't give you 59. Marisol gives 58. Adriana to me gives like, I would say like early 50s, maybe like, I would give Adriana 48 and above. She don't really give that she about to be 60 next year for me. Okay. People might feel differently about that. So then Julia ends up saying that she did not agree with the way that Adriana was behaving. And she was like, she feels like it's so unacceptable. And she said, honestly, I think she has a problem with me being friends with you guys. And I told her, the only way our friendship would be undone is by her doing, which I think is kind of crazy to put all of that on somebody. You know, Julia is trying to me, that already sets up that you're going to find a reason not to be friends with her. If you tell somebody the only reason why we would not be friends would be because of your behavior, it's kind of crazy to me. When it seems like Adriana is probably just trying to let her know that, girl, it is kind of weird for you to be friends with people that you know don't like me. All right? Like, that's kind of crazy. And I don't think she's wrong for pointing that out. So the conversation continues with them speaking about Alexia and talking about how they really want to get Alexia's mind off of Todd. You know, they do the flashback scene to like 6 weeks earlier when she was having that dinner and she when she was crying about Todd, saying, you know what, why do I keep going back to him? He's so horrible. Y'all have to save me. Like, I was like, Alexia, get a grip, girl. Get a grip, okay? So they decide that they want to take Alexia to Spain, more specifically Seville, okay? And they were like, yes, if we're going on a trip, we need to invite all the ladies and we just need to get her mind off of it. So they ended up FaceTiming Alexia and they tell her like, hey girl, we want to go on a trip and it's all for you to get your mind off of Todd. We want to go to Seville. And Alexia says, oh, that's wonderful, but we have to be back by November the 18th because November the 19th is Todd's birthday. And the face that Julia made, I actually agree with this time because I was like, girl, what? And then Marisol had to let her know, girl, if we go on this trip, this is a girl's trip, okay? This is a girl's trip. Like, we're not talking about Todd. We're not going to speak about him. We're just going to have a good time and not worry about that man. I honestly feel bad for Alexia. And the reason why I say that is because you can tell that Alexia never learned how to decenter men from her life, because I feel as though the way that Alexia is moving is a woman moving out of desperation. And I don't think it's due to the money situation. That could be part of it. But I honestly think that Alexia thought Todd was her Prince Charming. And I feel like she bought into like the Disney princess rhetoric of like, you know, everything is worth it once you get a man at the end. He's going to be your Prince Charming. He's going to right all the wrongs and you guys are going to ride off into the sunset, and all the pain and harm that you went through will be worth it because you got this man. And I really think that's what she saw out of Todd. But unfortunately, Todd was a frog and a toad. Like, he played in your face. And I feel like if Alexia was really the boss that she really was, she would have let Todd go the moment he played in Frankie's face and the moment he showed her that he didn't care about her. The way that he moved out of that house and filed for divorce was the biggest sign of him telling you that he never respected you or loved or cared about you. Because to ghost someone in such a way is nasty. It really is. And so I just feel like she thought that Todd was the end of her rainbow. Because when you think about it, Alexia is 58 years old. She has three, some people would say, failed marriages. And she's also dealing with two sons, one with special needs and another one that probably has depression or anxiety and is self-medicating with other substances. So she got a lot going on. And I think she is mourning or having a hard time coming to grips with the life she thought she was going to have. And I feel like her need to hold on to Todd is in her mind. She's hoping that eventually he will come to his senses and then they'll be back in love again. And this will just be something that's a part of their story. But I don't think that's ever going to happen, to be honest. I would hope by the time we get to the reunion, Alexia has somewhat realized that Todd is trash and she needs to move on and find something new or just be by herself. But I don't know. I just, when listening to her and watching her this season, I definitely feel like, girl, this is sad. So the next scene we have is of Guerdy and Dr. Jackie. So Guerdy ends up calling Dr. Jackie. We find out that Dr. Jackie and Guerdy connected once she had her cancer diagnosis. And we all know that Dr. Jackie is a 2-time breast cancer survivor. And, you know, they're just talking with each other because they actually built a friendship. Guerdy speaks about how she is having issues in her intimacy department with Russell. And Dr. Jackie was like, oh, girl, I got you. I'm going to sing you something. And Dr. Jackie talks about how, you know, you have to learn how to be perfectly imperfect. And Guerdy's like, girl, yes, that's what I've been saying. That's what it was at my party. And then things get emotional where Dr. Jackie basically tells Guerdy that she is so enamored and proud of her with the way that she has carried herself with breast cancer. She was just like, you know, I sit back and I watch you in awe because you really don't look like what you have been through, and the way that you are still able to maintain positivity is wonderful. Guerdy starts to cry. You can hear that Dr. Jackie is getting emotional, and Guerdy ends up thanking Dr. Jackie for telling her this because she's like, you know, right now in the friend group I'm in, I'm struggling. You know, people don't really seem to have my back or want to hear my side of anything. And so it flashbacks to when they were on the yacht, and Guerdy was like, it's okay. I know y'all aren't going to hear my opinion. I know y'all really don't care about what I have to say. And then you have Marisol and Alexia being like, no, Guerdy, that's not it. We just don't agree with what you did. And you pretty much involved us in this situation y'all got going on. And so Dr. Jackie talks about how, you know, friend, you know, thank those friends for the, basically thank your haters. Thank the people that have hated on you, because they are supposed to be able to motivate you to still persist and be who you are, as well as they give you the opportunity to reevaluate the behavior that you have. So Guerdy is like, you know what? I'm going to take that information. Dr. Jackie also brings up, treat it like them being the rear view mirror, not the windshield. You only slightly look at the past, and the past is in the back of your mind, whereas your future is brighter and it's bigger. That's why the windshield is bigger than the rear view. So we see Guerdy in her confessional, and she just talks about how, like, she's going to heed Jackie's words. And she's like, you know what? I'm choosing to be positive. I'm choosing to move forward. No longer am I going to allow this to bog me down. Now, when I saw this, I was excited because I'm so ready for Married to Medicine to come back. I'm too ready for Married to Medicine to come back. But I also thought it was nice to see that Guerdy does have other avenues and outlets other than this group. Like, these people aren't really her friends. They're more like her co-workers. But I do understand her needing someone to talk to about the way that she's feeling, because, you know, there's a lot. She had a big life change in her life, and the ladies don't really seem to care that much. Another thing about this scene, I love this leopard confessional with the gloves. She looks yummy. Okay. I said, come on, Guerdy. Okay. Whoever styled her in this outfit, yeah, keep them, Guerdy, because you look beautiful right here. I don't like that pink confessional. I definitely don't like that metallic where you spray painted your forehead. But this right here, this looks amazing on Guerdy. Okay. So Guerdy says she's going to move forward with the women and she's going to do things her way. So the next thing we get is a double date with Martina, Julia, Masood, and Stephanie. Stephanie is always dressed like she's going into a business meeting. I said, girl, what is this? What is this? And Martina needs a stylist because we've been watching her since season 4. And I'm like, she's never dressed up. It's always track suits, a collared shirt, and some pants. Like, I get it. She is the masculine one in the relationship, but I need her to have some type of swag, something. Give us some aura, something, some vibe. I don't know. Because Julia actually looked nice. And at least Masood was matching Stephanie's energy. And I'm like, Martina could have matched Julia's, but she didn't. Also, I didn't get why they brought the dog. And I was kind of annoyed that no one asked, like, why was the dog there? Like, unless it was a service animal, I don't get why they brought it to dinner. But you could tell that Masood was so excited to meet Martina. Like, what Stephanie said was actually true when she met with Julia that one time. And she was like, no, my husband is obsessed with your wife. He was smiling ear to ear. Like every question that he asked, Martina was about tennis. He asked her about if she would ever go back to playing tennis. Would she instruct or teach the boys how to play tennis or coach them? He also brought up her arms and how back in the day they used to watch her on TV and he thought she had the most beautiful arms. I was like, oh my God, like you are really fanning out right now. And I thought it was funny. They then start asking them questions about the boys. And Stephanie brings up, what are y'all going to do when the boys are like, how old are y'all going to be when the boys turn 20? Even though I thought that was a rude question to ask, that's a valid point because Martina's 68. In 20 years, she will be 88. When Julia, in 20 years, she will be 73 because I think she's 53 right now. And that's a big deal in my mind. That's why this adoption feels weird to me. You know, the problematic behavior that we see from Julia and Martina is one thing. Next, you have their ages because I'm like, so in their 20s, are they going to be responsible for taking care of the two of you? Because we find out in this conversation or at this, double date that Veruca and Emma, which are Julia's daughters, are not talking to Martina or Julia because of the adoption. And I'm like, is the sole responsibility of taking care of both of y'all going to be placed on them? And if so, that ain't fair because they didn't sign up for that. Okay. So getting back to the conversation, they start talking about siblings. We find out that Julia has a brother that's like 12 years younger than her by the name of Sasha. She goes to Moscow at least like, I think she said twice a year to visit him. Then they end up asking Stephanie, does she have siblings? And she was like, yeah, I have two sisters. They're twins. And she talks about how they're not in a good place. And she starts to kind of get emotional. And Martina's like, well, why aren't you guys speaking? And Stephanie was like, we don't speak the same language, Then she apologizes for getting heavy or getting emotional. And Julia's like, tells her you don't have to apologize because they're going through the same situation with their daughters, Veruca and Emma. And this is where Julia explains that the daughters are not really okay with the adoption, it seems. And it also seems like Julia and Martina did not communicate to them about this life-changing decision. We actually get this flashback scene of Julia crying on FaceTime to her brother, Sasha, and him speaking to her in Russian, basically telling her time heals all wounds because she was expressing to him that they've tried to call the girls, email, FaceTime, do whatever, and explain to them why they chose to make this decision, but the girls don't want to hear it. So then we get this confessional of Stephanie, and mind you, she actually looks really good in this red with the wet hair, and I normally don't like the wet hair look, but Stephanie looks her age here. Stephanie in her two confessionals either looks like Jackie Kennedy or she looks like somebody going into the office. It's always either I'm going to dress like a 60-year-old or a 40-year-old in the 50s or 60s, or I'm dressing like I'm about to go give a presentation at the office. But this outfit right here, I'm like, okay, this is giving I'm 40 years old. Okay, Stephanie, keep this stylist. So Stephanie says in her confessional that she feels like Julia and Martina need to nip this in the bud because she sees the toll that it's taking on her mom, who hasn't been in communication with her sisters. And eventually it gets harder and harder for you to reconcile. And she also expressed how you can't get that time back. We then get back to the table and Martina says the same thing where she is heartbroken that the daughters will not communicate with them because she's like, we've been trying to talk to them. And again, she reiterates that you can't get that time back either. To me, what this boils down to is that it seems like Julia never takes into consideration how her decisions will impact her children. Everyone always referenced how Julia never knew the name of the schools that her daughters attended, which I thought was crazy coming from my household where my parents pretty much was like, they went to parent teacher conferences. They talked to my teachers. They wanted to know what was going on at the school because I was, children are in school most of the day. Okay, you only get to see your kids in the morning and in the afternoon and at nighttime. So that was kind of telling about the way that Julia engages with her children. I also thought it was really telling that her daughters decided to move overseas, and it doesn't seem like they want to come back. Like they're enjoying their time with their family over there more so than wanting to be around Julia. And she seems to have been the primary parent their entire life. And when you decide that you don't want to be around the primary and you go to the secondary, something's wrong with the primary, if you ask me. And granted, even though Julia's daughters are in their early 20s, they're still her children. And adopting those two kids leaves a great impact on their lives because, again, like I stated, when Julia and Martina are in their 70s and 80s, who is going to be taking care of them? Who's going to be helping the boys? Because even to me, being a parent is a full-time job until you die, because people still call upon their parents when they're in their 50s and 60s and 70s because that is your parent. Okay, I also feel like Julia has never reconciled with the murder of her son, and maybe that has also impacted the way that she has treated her daughters or parent her daughters. And I think she should have went to therapy instead of adopting. Okay, because this decision seems to have really disrupted her life. Okay, because she keeps blaming the adoption for her behavior and the way she's treating Guerdy. So the energy ends up switching up because Julia reveals that they are going to Spain. Stephanie is excited. Martina seemed more excited than Stephanie because she was like, "Oh, girl, I want to go." Then Stephanie was like, "Okay, and I'm going to be in my plane." And then Martina was like, "Yeah, I really want to go now." But then Julia was like, "No, my love, someone has to babysit the boys." So Stephanie's like, "Who all is going?" And Julia was like, "Well, everyone's invited. The trip is for Alexia. We just want to get her mind off of Todd." And Stephanie kind of makes a face and she's like, "Hey, can we talk by the bar?" So they end up leaving Masood and Martina at the table, which I was just kind of like, why couldn't y'all just have the conversation right there? But I guess they wanted to film a scene of Masood fangirling out over Martina. And I was like, okay. So we see Julia and Stephanie at the bar. And Stephanie basically says she feels like Alexia is not very welcoming in the group. And she feels like everyone else has been welcoming except Alexia. She also feels like Alexia is bullying her. Julia makes a face where she's just like, I don't think that's what's happening. And Stephanie was like, no, I get it. You guys are friends and you really are going to take her side. But you have to see it from my point of view, like she's been coming at me. And the truth of the matter is Stephanie is reaching. Alexia is an asshole. Alexia is entitled. She's obnoxious. She can be narcissistic. She can be very self-absorbed. We know this whole storyline with Todd is stupid. But at the end of the day, Alexia did welcome Stephanie into the group with more welcome arms than she did with Nicole. Like Alexia actually was trying to be cordial with Stephanie and told Stephanie repeatedly to stop mentioning Todd. And Stephanie, instead of respecting that boundary that Alexia like put up for her, she kept walking past it and jumping over it. She's not being bullied. She's not being, well, she is being belittled, but that was after you tried that lady. So I'm okay with her coming at Stephanie like this. I just feel like Stephanie is just not used to people matching her energy, and she's taking it as somebody hazing her or bullying her. But girl, you started with her first. Like, what are we doing? So Stephanie basically says she wants to have a conversation with Alexia because she would like to extend her plane seat to her, because Stephanie is only going to allow 3 women to get on her plane. So it's going to be Stephanie, Julia, and Larsa as it states for right now in the episode. The 4th position on the plane is still up for grabs. So it's now time for Marisol's preppy party. We actually see her friend Jennifer that is there. And she basically says that the only reason why she invited Adriana is because Julia and Adriana are friends. She was like, hopefully I'm getting ketamine, Adriana, and we have a good day. She says the reason why she wants to have the party is because her daddy was a very waspy, preppy Connecticut man. I said, girl, just say you wanted to have a theme party and you wanted it to be preppy, because every picture that they showed of her dad was not giving preppy, if you ask me. They do show this picture of a younger Marisol and she looked good. She looked good. She should have just let her face age naturally. So then we see that Alexia is the first one to get to the house. And Alexia and Marisol have a conversation where Marisol lets Alexia know that she had a conversation with Kiki. And Kiki basically told her that she had a conversation with Guerdy. And Guerdy pretty much said that she felt like the women were in a cult. And Alexia immediately gets offended because she was like, why would she say that? Like, this is not a cult. And Marisol says, I don't like it either because that denotes that we're sinister and I don't think that's fair. So she was like, I want to have a conversation with her. So the next person to show up is actually Guerdy, and she gives Marisol a Bartesian. If you go to the spicy corner, we find out that she in fact did purchase that gift, and it wasn't a re-gift from Lisa, because Marisol says in her confessional that she heard that Lisa gifted this Bartesian to Guerdy, and she felt like Guerdy was regifting it to her. But like I said in my spicy corner, Guerdy dropped receipts, and no, she in fact paid for it. So we see this conversation play out between Guerdy, Alexia, and Marisol. They actually confront Guerdy about her cult comment, and Guerdy stands on it. She's like, yeah, I said it. She's like, it's very much one band, one sound with y'all. One person says something, y'all all agree with it. Now, I'm going to be honest, and I talked about this in the Spicy Corny. I don't believe the women are in a cult, to be honest. I don't think there's a cult mentality. But I understand what Guerdy is saying, because it does really give that Marisol and Alexia do have this certain pull over this group. But we have seen everybody fight with everyone in this group. To me, when I think of someone saying that there's like a cult mentality, I just think of people blindly following and not questioning authority. But we've seen the girls argue. What I see in this group is just a bunch of clicks, and Guerdy doesn't have her click anymore. Because if you think about it, seasons 4 and 5, it was definitely giving the OGs versus the newbies, because you had Larsa, Alexia, and Marisol versus Julia, Nicole, Guerdy, and Adriana, being lumped in with them because she's best friends with Julia at that time. And then Lisa and Kiki were like floating in the middle, but they leaned more to the OG side because both Lisa and Larsa have a good relationship at the time, and Kiki was really close with Larsa. So season 4 and 5, everyone was kind of okay with the group being broken in that way because it was even. Like, no group had more power than the other. Then we get to season 6, and it seems like friendships and relationships were developing that we didn't think would happen. You had Larsa and Guerdy falling out, but then somehow making amends in Mexico and making amends in at the reunion, and things moving forward. You had Alexia becoming friends with Julia, and then you had Nicole and Marisol, where Marisol apologizes to Nicole because of her behavior. So things were moving differently. The group was shifting. But then we start season 7. Nicole leaves the show. They introduce Stephanie, who is really close with Larsa, and now Julia has switched up on Adriana and Guerdy. And at the time, everybody had a friend in this group. Nicole and Guerdy were friends. They were locked down with each other. Julia and Adriana were locked down. Larsa and Lisa, Larsa and Kiki, Marisol and Alexia. But now Julia has run over to Marisol and Alexia, which shifted the group dynamic. Lisa and Larsa are on the outs, but the new girl Stephanie and Larsa are friends. And that kind of also shifts the dynamic. And then you have Adriana and Guerdy trying to figure out who are they cool with in this group now that the person that they were banking on being their friend has switched up on them. So the conversation continues with Alexia saying that she doesn't like that, and she was like, we have to be careful about the words that we use. She then goes on to say, well, like, Guerdy, do you even want to be in this group? It is giving that they're trying to like ice her out or push her out of the group. And Guerdy starts to get emotional, where she was like, I said that because it doesn't seem like any of y'all care about my opinion or want to listen to me. And so then Marisol cuts her off, and she basically was like, no, Guerdy, we are listening. We just don't like that you involved us in this with the whole text message situation. So then Guerdy starts to cry, where she's like, honestly, I'm trying to keep life simple and stupid, like, especially after what happened, with the cancer situation. Like, I'm just trying to live my life with the least amount of drama and strife. And so then Marisol and Alexia decide, like, okay, girl, we're just going to leave this where it's at, but don't involve us in this situation. And honestly, she hasn't involved y'all in it. Julia is the one that involved y'all into this by throwing water on that lady and freaking out at your wedding party, Marisol. But I will say, I feel like Julia is lying to Marisol and Alexia, even though I feel like there's some like alliance situation going on. I think she has Marisol and Alexia believing that there's way more to this situation with her and Guerdy. And I think they believe her more so because they have a relationship with Julia instead of Guerdy. But I wonder if that's going to come out at the reunion, that she lied to them about the situation, or she made it seem like there was more to it than not. So the next couple of people we see pull up is Adriana, Larsa, and Stephanie. I thought Adriana looked cute. I actually liked what Stephanie had on. I don't know what Larsa had on. I said, girl, what is this slutty office attire? And Larsa even says, girl, I dress slutty, not preppy. And I thought that was funny. So we actually see the rest of the ladies pull up. Lisa is late as usual, but we see a conversation take place between Marisol and Adriana, where Adriana actually apologizes for her behavior towards Marisol. And Marisol basically tells her, girl, I don't know what it is with you and me. Adriana was like, girl, I feel like you hate me. And Marisol doesn't deny whether she hates her or not, but she's just like, I just feel like you're always coming at me. And Marisol was like, I try to ignore you and keep it pushing, but you're always coming at me, bro. And so Adriana basically says she doesn't want to fight with Marisol anymore. And Marisol agrees. She was like, we got too much going on with this trip to Spain. We have Larsa versus Lisa, Julia versus Guerdy, Stephanie versus Alexia. And I don't feel like we need to be fighting. I just think we need to move forward. So we both see them in their confessionals basically saying they don't really trust each other, but they're both tired of arguing with one another. We see Adriana go inside the house and let everyone know that her and Marisol made up. And Larsa tickled me when she leaned over to Alexia and was like, how long you think that's gonna last? And Alexia was like, girl, who truly knows? So we see the rest of the group go outside to sit down in Marisol's backyard to enjoy the preppy party. Marisol again says that the preppy party is about her dad. She's like, everybody knows me more so for my mom, but my dad played a big role in my life as well. This is also when Adriana reveals that she is actually getting her master's degree at Harvard. And Larsa and Marisol have the most to say about it in their confessional. They don't actually believe her. Larsa say, girl, you can pay for them classes. And Marisol says, like, girl, you can buy a Harvard t-shirt at the airport. So I don't know about this, but I believe that she is getting her master's degree at Harvard. We've never heard or seen Adriana lie about something. And I think somebody said that a classmate of hers came out and said that they had a group project together, and she was very nice and kind. So the party is going off without a hitch. Everyone's enjoying themselves, eating and laughing and giggling. And then we have this moment where we see Stephanie tell Alexia while they're eating that she wants to have a conversation with her. Alexia is like, okay, that's cool. We then see Guerdy pull Julia to the side to have a conversation with her. And I want Guerdy to stop having conversations with Julia. I want her to stop. Because every time Guerdy has a conversation with Julia, Julia is the one that is steering the conversation. And it never ends with Julia giving Guerdy a sincere apology. Julia and Guerdy are talking. Guerdy is trying to figure out where Julia's head is at after the whole text message situation. And Guerdy basically says she felt like her back was up against the wall. She was like, everyone thinks I'm a piece of shit. Nobody's listening to me. But I was actually surprised by Julia's response when Guerdy said that, because she looked genuinely surprised. And she immediately was like, nobody thinks that about you. And I'm like, so do you care about her or you don't? Because every time that Guerdy and Julia have a conversation, Julia is always glaring at Guerdy. And I wonder if it's because Guerdy was getting emotional that Julia felt bad for what she was doing, or if she's putting on this show like she really doesn't care about Guerdy. It was just weird to me that she was like really surprised that Guerdy said what she said. And I just want Guerdy to stop talking to Julia, because Julia doesn't apologize. Guerdy is always the one apologizing. Guerdy is always the one looking for Julia to confirm her feelings and confirm that they had a genuine friendship. And Julia doesn't give her that. Julia, from that conversation, is just telling Guerdy, like, we're not friends, but we can remain cordial. Guerdy, from this point of view, I think is looking at this conversation as them like starting over and still trying to maintain a relationship, because she hugs her, tells her she loves her, and then they walk away from the table and everyone's cheering. But I'm like, that lady plays in your face, Guerdy. She's not your friend. And I just want her to stop talking to her and stop apologizing. So the women are all excited that Guerdy and Julia have seemingly made up. We then see Stephanie take this opportunity to have a conversation with Alexia, but this time she goes into like, I think it's a pool house in Marisol's backyard. And so they sit down and have a conversation. Stephanie basically says that she feels like Alexia is belittling her. And when she made that analogy of like, I'm a Chihuahua and you're a Rottweiler, that was just to show that you're bigger than me and you seem to have that way about yourself. Alexia basically says, well, girl, you say I bark a lot, and that's the only reason why I said what I said. Basically saying, girl, if you're going to call me a dog, I'm a big dog and you a little dog. That's what it is. And so Stephanie was like, well, I feel like you are bullying me or hazing me in some type of way. And Alexia kind of looks at Stephanie like, girl, what are you talking about? But she somewhat apologizes to her and says, well, I didn't mean to make you feel that way, but you keep bringing up my husband. And I've told you multiple times to chill out about that. So while they're in the pool house, going back and forth, you end up seeing, I think it was Kiki, Julia, and Lisa looking through the window, watching them argue. Stephanie gets pissed off and she's like, guys, go away. And I said, Stephanie, calm down. Calm, like, calm down. It's not that deep. So then Stephanie brings up how she's going to take her private jet for the first half of the trip, and she offers a seat to Alexia. But before offering the seat to Alexia, she explains to her that she actually offered the seat to Marisol, but Marisol declined because she did not want to leave Alexia out. So when she offers the seat to Alexia, Alexia has this dumbfounded look on her face like, girl, why would you think I would get on a plane without my best friend after you just told me that my best friend declined the seat? She kind of makes like that Scooby-Doo sound like, uh-oh, like, row. And she's like, no, girl, I'm good. And Stephanie is actually perplexed at the fact that Alexia is giving up flying in a private jet to fly commercial because of friendship. I said, Stephanie, maybe that's the reason you don't have friends, because you don't value your friendships. Also, I feel like Stephanie has this hard on for Alexia because to bring a stuff of Rottweiler into your confessional, and it's like, girl, the only reason she said it after explaining it to you, like you came at her, so she came at you, is weird. I think Stephanie is just coming at Alexia because Alexia is one of the faces for Real Housewives of Miami. And I think she was hoping that by arguing with Alexia, that would garner her a second season, which it did because she's first chair. Okay. So we see them leave the pool house and sit at the table again. Larsa actually came to check up on them to make sure that they were okay. And then that's when Stephanie reveals that she's taking her private jet the first half of the trip. And everyone is like excited because at first everyone thinks that they're getting on the private jet, just to find out that the private jet is only going to house her, Larsa, Julia, and one other person. Stephanie explains to the group that she offered a seat to Marisol, but Marisol turned the seat down because she couldn't ride with Alexia, and Alexia did the same thing. And everyone's like, oh, like that's a genuine friend right there. So she's like, I have a free seat. She was like, I'm really close to Larsa. I'm getting very close to Julia, and I'm cool with Kiki, but I don't know Adriana that well. And I was like, dang, you didn't even consider Lisa or Guerdy. And mind you, Guerdy and Lisa to me seem to be the most excited about the private jet. But I'm also looking at Guerdy, like you said that you and Stephanie talk a lot. I don't get why she wouldn't offer it to you, you know? So then Adriana is also considered for a spot because Stephanie says, I haven't really gotten to know her that well yet. So Kiki basically says, I'll make the decision for you. Take Adriana so you can get to know her. So then Adriana makes a statement where she was like, Very kind of you, Kiki. And you would think my supposed best friend would make sure that I was on the plane as well. And so then Julia makes this like ugly face because she does not want to be on the plane with Adriana, which I'm like, dang, girl, you really threw that lady away, which is wild. And then Adriana says how she loves Marisol and Alexia's relationship because Alexia and Marisol are always going to have each other's back. We then see Julia say, well, I don't get to say who can get on the plane, but you still could have petitioned for your best friend to be on the plane if you wanted her to be there. So then Alexia starts crying because she realized how good of a friend Marisol is being towards her, even though Marisol doesn't like Todd and think this situation is stupid. So then they both start crying, and then we see Alexia cry in the confessional. And I said, even if you don't like Marisol and Alexia, you can respect their relationship and the love they have for each other. So that was the end of the episode. As always, remember to be bravely authentic. Definitely hop down in the comments below, like the video, and subscribe. And I'm out, y'all. Deuces.